get started with session 3. Goodness gracious. Yeah, I'm just so glad to have each of you here in whatever capacity feels best for you. And we're gonna check in a little bit this morning about how things are going, how you're feeling with your emotions, what you're noticing about your kind of go-to emotion regulation practices. And before we get started with that, I want to invite you to practice comfort body, but to bring in grounding and boundaries. So, in your chair, in a comfortable place, just feel into your body. If you like, you might like to do the body brushing just to connect with your body. Notice how your body wants to breathe, how your body wants to move, what you're feeling as you bring your attention down your body, down your back, down your legs. Just the foot as well. Noticing any tightness or tenseness or maybe extra spaciousness or relaxation or flexibility. Just noticing, how does your body feel? Just getting in touch with your body. Now, take a moment to establish your boundary. Maybe just check in with it. How does your boundary feel today? Where is it? Would you like to adjust it so that it feels better to you? Maybe you need more space today, or it's too big and you need to bring it in a little. Boundary state. I invite you to feel into the word comfort. Comfort. Is there a way that you could help yourself feel more comfortable? And is there a part of you that feels resistant to comfort? Perhaps notice what part of your boundary feels resistant or questioning of being comfortable, of allowing yourself comfort. Now feel into the word relaxation. Relaxation in your body and in your boundary. How does that feel? Is there something you can do to help yourself feel more relaxed? Is there a part of you that doesn't feel comfortable relaxing or feels resistant to relaxation? Where does that thought or feeling reside in your boundary and in your body? Now feel into the word ease. Ease. Let your body and your boundary welcome ease. Make space for ease. Is there something that you are becoming aware of you could do for yourself so that you can feel more at ease? Is there a part of you that has a hard time with feeling at ease or allowing yourself to be at ease? Where is this part of you in your body and in your body? Now feel into the words comfort, ease, relaxation. What image or feeling or sensation does that bring forward? And is there something you can do to help yourself feel more comfortable, at ease, and relaxed as we go into our session today? Did you become aware of, or did you become aware of a contract that you may need to burn? Take a moment to write it down, if that's what it was, or to do anything else that came up that you'd like to do to care for yourself, to acknowledge yourself and your emotions and your physical body, all of you, as we go into our session today. Getting grounded and defining your boundary are two essential practices for helping you to be present with your emotions as they're coming up. I think of them as one, feeling your emotions when they're present in your body when they're grounded. And two, defining your boundary gives you space with your emotions. Oftentimes we don't allow ourselves enough space, or we don't allow our emotions to take up enough space. Right? We might repress them or move them to the side or pretend like they're not happening. But if we define that boundary, define that space that you take up in the world, own it, then actually there's a lot of space in there for you to breathe, for you to have space to move around. And within that, there's a lot of spaciousness for listening to your emotions and learning. So I'd like to check in with you about how comfortable you feel with being present with your body, both in getting grounded and defining your boundary, and also with the other emotion regulation practices that you may have noticed that you do to help you when you are feeling really intense emotion, or maybe you don't know what to do with it, what you're feeling, or maybe you just want to change what you're feeling. And it can be something really simple, like just taking a breath and sighing. It can be putting on music. There's so many things you can do. They can be really tiny. It can be making yourself a cup of tea. And the other side of this, is there anything stopping you from feeling like you can get grounded and define your boundary and take care of yourself when you need to, or to acknowledge your emotions? Is there anything stopping you from welcoming your emotions? Is there a feeling in your body or your boundary? Or maybe there's a voice, or just a sensation, or a guarding sense to yourself. Maybe it's a part of yourself that you just beginning to have access to. That you could become aware of. I've found that making a list, that my anxiety helps me by making a list of the practices that help me, whether it's a mental list or an actual physical list. Or you might just say it out loud to yourself when you notice you're doing something that helps you regulate your emotions. You might just say, "Oh, I'm taking a walk now because I was feeling really intensely angry. I'm feeling kind of sad, and I want to give myself some space to for this." Or I want to go outside and feel grounded. I'm having a hard time being grounded. I know that being outside and giving myself that time to just open to being in nature is really important. In a sense, when you talk about your emotion, good morning, your emotion regulation practices to yourself, then you are, in a sense, witnessing yourself and acknowledging yourself. You're making it conscious. And that itself is really powerful. Something I'd like to do today, after we practice some scenarios, is give you the opportunity to be witnessed by all of us in the glory of all of your emotions and in the power of speaking your truth. And we'll do that at the end today. What I'd like to do today is have each of you share your scenario, and then we'll go through it. We'll practice talking it out and working through it and play with different things. And obviously, the scenario is not being charged for you. There's that emotional attachment, and all the kind of unspoken aspects of it that it's impossible to present in
I hated missing. So sorry again. How are you guys?
Happy to have you.
Good.
I grabbed
How
a
are you?
granola bar. I ran in the house and grabbed a granola bar. I'm like, oh.
Here I come.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, welcome. It's good to have you here. Glad we're all here together for our last session, but sad, but it's been really good so far. It's been really lovely. Would anybody like to go first with their scenario?
Okay. There's a ground.
Do that? Yeah, let's get grounded. If you want to walk, get up and walk around a minute for a second. Do that. That might help you. Survive to be full in your body. You might just do a little body brushing. We just did a really nice grounding and boundary and comfort body practice. So I'd say I'm pretty grounded. How are you? How is everybody else doing for grounding and boundaries? What helps you feel grounded and boundary defined? Okay. Are you ready?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Please.
So there was a long time friendship between two people over 15 years. Over the years, during just about every conversation, one of the friends, we'll call him the talker, does the vast majority of the talking in terms of the content. The other friend, let's call him the listener, speaks little and occasionally offers one word or short sentence interjections during the course of the conversation. One day, the listener tells the talker that their conversations are often lopsided in terms of the amount of content spoken by the talker. And that the listener wants more balance for their conversations. After that, the talker makes an effort to invite the listener into the conversation, but it seems forced and not natural or genuine. Eventually, the conversations gravitate towards the old pattern where the talker dominates the conversation.
So is the conflict that the listener wants to be heard, and even though they ask for it, they're still not being heard, and so they're looking for a next step?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a conflict of how to move forward, or a question of how to move forward for the listener.
So when you define your boundary around this situation, what are the gifts of the conversations? I guess what does your boundary look and feel like in these conversations?
The boundary feels overrun in terms of the volume and I'll call it selfishness, I guess, from the talker
Mm-hmm.
in terms of the subject matter focus. So there's a volume, and then there's sort of a selfishness is the only thing I can come up with. Self-centeredness in terms of there's not a reciprocal
Mm-hmm.
back and forth,
Mm-hmm.
an interchange
Mm-hmm.
or an exchange,
Right.
an exchange of ideas, an exchange or a sharing. There's a lopsided
Yeah. Yeah.
feeling to it. So the boundary itself, back to your question, is not, it feels overrun.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it raises interesting questions in terms of how to reestablish the boundary or to reestablish the boundary by asserting that you'd like to say something or I'd like to add to the conversation or
Mm-hmm.
so asked and answered, I think, in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, now that I'm thinking about it, so now I'm sort of answering my own question in a way, you know, at least one aspect of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Jabra or Laura, what would your response be to this situation where you had this long-standing friendship? You've already tried to assert what you want and what you need in the friendship, but it's reverting back to the old comfortable pattern. How do you go forward in a way that feels good to you?
So I have my scenario is similar to this. Like I was kind of smiling because my first thought goes to, for me, would be conscious complaining to try to pull out the boundary and the anger. So go into that first and just like do that complaining to figure out what I'm angry about because it gets buried. And then try to figure out how to say it. And that's where I'm still, that's not comfortable for me. Like, how do I assert myself? How do I say it in a way that is honoring of both and not caught up in, the the bad side, not the gift side of like the anxiety and panic or the anger. So for me, I would go into that and go from there.
Yeah. Yeah. That sounds really wise in the sense of you're kind of laying out all the pieces to get a good look at, well, what are the issues that I'm really irritated with here? It's really,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
this person, is it about me? What is it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm struggling with this one a little bit for two reasons. Number one, I've been on the talker side of things before, and the way someone communicated to me about that, I went to a shut down place,
Mm.
which couldn't have possibly been their intention. I mean, I think they had a valid point, and I didn't know how to move with it. I didn't know at that point how to make it right. And so I just reacted over to that other side, the other contrast side of just, okay, then I won't talk at all. If I'm not doing it right, I'm not going to talk at all. And so it's so interesting because this is right in the middle of everything that came up for me as we did our grounding, and you ask some of those questions about what the word relaxation, comfort means to you. And I just went all stream of consciousness on myself, got all kinds of fun information about that. But this is like right in the middle of all that came up for me. And I feel like you, Laura, it's not the exact same situation, but for me anyway, I can feel what's coming up here as we're talking about channel emotions, coming back to a place that I've found a way of coping, but it's in response to that deeper question of, can I be me? Can I express my emotions in the presence of the you? I mean, I can have a philosophical answer to that or a logical answer, but in day-to-day life, like examples like this, like the example I wrote out, probably the one you're going to present to, Laura, that's where I can get really bound up. And I could tell you what I might do, but it's not ultimately what I want to do, which is why I'm here, why we're all here, right? So I don't know. I will say I've actually had experience being on both sides of that equation that you laid out, Brendan. So I think that's a brilliant scenario to bring because I've been on both sides. And I would have to say, I know I take control and responsibilities we've talked about in the past, and I control my experience is what I do. But in terms of an interdependence with another human being, no, I don't have that one down yet. So I'm really curious to see what comes up today. This should be good. More questions than answers at the moment. But thank you, everybody. Thank you, Brendan.
Yeah, Brendan, what do you think your response could be to this?
I think, I touched upon it in terms of inserting my voice, being more direct about what I want and need. That brings up a lot of fear and panic from olden days. But I think, as I said earlier, that's part and parcel of establishing the boundary. And it's not easy, it's not easy. It's not an easy thing to do, but there's some shame and guilt in terms of the fact that a relationship takes two to tango, right? So I'm getting something out of it as well, right? So if you don't speak, well, you don't really say anything that's controversial or anything that anyone's going to disagree with, right? So you can hide in a manner of speaking, and then that's sort of intertwined with the fear. So there's guilt and shame about the words that I choose to put forth, like, oh, I'm not worthy, there's an unworthiness, or there's a, you know, some old stuff there. Um, and I'm just talking stream of consciousness here in terms of the emotions. I don't know that there's a right answer. There isn't a right answer because it's just a process. But, I think the first step is to ensure and um, make stronger or prop up the boundary by inserting my voice and my wants, needs, and desires in terms of a more balanced conversation. And that's very scary for me.
Yeah, defining a
You
boundary
know,
is really scary. In the sense of it, it challenges your status quo, what you've established comfort with, right? Like I can stay within
Absolutely. Absolutely.
and now I'm going to move that line.
Right.
What's going to happen. And the thing is, I think a lot of times that the fear can be so much greater than the reality of what that actually means, right? Because
Right.
it's almost a panic that comes up with defining your boundary. And when you do it, I mean, when you define a boundary, it is in a relationship. It involves somebody else, right? And it is often the degree of closeness in that relationship that correlates to the degree of panic in you,
Right.
right? So if you're close to this person, then changing that established pathway that you have with each other, your grooves are pretty well set. So
Right. Right.
and to a certain extent, is this friendship going to survive if I move the pathway? If I change these grooves, can we are we both flexible enough to make it?
Mhm.
And then there's the accompanying fear of, am I going to survive, right? Or, that's real old stuff, but,
Mhm.
if I speak up for myself, and not be the child who's, I mean, I don't want to go into therapy session, but you know what I'm saying? The child who's
Yeah.
seen and not heard, right? That type of deal.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, it sounds like anytime we're talking about panic, it's really panic from the past.
Right.
So it has to deal with some part of you that is still stuck in a past situation.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever you can become aware of that, it can be an opportunity to welcome a part of yourself back and to bring them back and say, hey, I'm an adult now. I can take care of these things. I control this world. And you didn't have any control and that really sucked for you, but I'm here now.
Great delineation in terms of panic really speaking to that, scared little child part of us,
Yeah, it's
that depended on the adults to survive and didn't want to do anything to jeopardize that,
exactly. Yeah, I mean, children have really few choices, very few sources of recourse when they're so dependent on the adults in their life, especially at a very young age. So it is inherent in them to want to please, to want to survive and do whatever they have to do that. And the panic works in a lot of different ways, but if you've heard of Stockholm syndrome, that's a way for your panic to work. And Stockholm syndrome is essentially where you're a prisoner of your of somebody, and you take on their perspective.
Right. You take on
empathizing with them, and for your own survival.
Yeah, it's the hostage takes on the
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 perspective.
tenets of the hostage, the perspective and tenets of the hostage takers, right?
Mhm. Great. So in that respect, yes, it makes sense as a child, but at the same time, now you're an adult, and things have changed for you, and bringing all of the pieces of yourself up to speed on your adult self. Oh, hi, come with me. Look what we
Right.
can do. I'm an adult now. Look what I can do.
Right. Right. And I think, and we touched on it a little bit before, but when when you do panic, you go into that automatic pilot mode, you know. And for me, it's that bulldozer mode, that sort of hyper focused mode. Um, and I never saw it as panic until you pointed it out to me last week in that phone session.
Mhm.
Because for me, it's I equate it with strength, but really it's a reaction to the panic. You know.
It's a survival reaction.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And honestly, once you work through this stuff, you might come back to this same action, the same series of actions, but not from that kind of unconscious space of I got to get it done or I'm not going to survive. It's going to be, hey, this is a really efficient way of getting things done. I'm going to do it this way.
Right.
So it'll be more of a conscious choice.
Right.
We're going
And I
to.
think that's where boundary and the coping mechanisms, the
Emotion
where
regulation.
you emotional, yeah, right, that creates that space where even though you're still, or I may be still hyper focused, I'm able to get a little bit of distance from it
Mm-hmm.
and say, okay, I'm doing this, but I'm actually aware that I'm doing it this time instead of just
Instead of just kind of waking up afterwards and saying, oh, wow, I just bulldozed a path through the trees and
right,
I
right,
didn't really want to do it that way. I guess
right,
it's done now.
right, exactly.
Yeah. Laura, you had your hand up, or did you have a comment?
My thinking was once I figure out and get agile with the boundaries and, the 17 team members that I have, Team Laura, that's right here with me now. Then what I realize and what I feel kind of a sadness for and an anger almost is that I don't have the skills, the language skills. Like, how do you, there's a way to speak to people that I don't know. Like I said, I've been looking things up and practicing, but I don't have that. Like, I always that shame still comes in and tries to get me to go, don't say that. That's stupid. That's dumb. And I want to connect with people. But then I think, well, maybe I'm being a, bulldozer, or maybe I'm being a conversational narcissist, or maybe I'm whatever. So that skills piece, I see a lot with my hairstylist that I was just with. She has a big decision to make, but she doesn't want to make it because she doesn't want to tell the person. It's a boundary thing. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm seeing the world in a whole new way now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that skills piece about that's what I would love to have a class on is how, how do you, once you get to that boundary and you're ready to speak, how do you do that? So just a side there.
Yeah. Actually, there's a really great who has written a book called Taking the War Out of Our Words, Powerful Non-Defensive Communication. Her name is Sharon Ellison.
Sharon Ellison.
Mm-hmm. And she does really great work in communication and helping people communicate in a way that is not confrontational, but it also does not give yourself away, right? You don't, you're not sacrificing yourself for peace or anything like that, right? You are I mean, she's developed something that is really beautiful. There's many different ways of questions that she's developed. And one of the most important parts is just using a down tone with questions. So instead of
Sound.
ending your questions like this, you end them like this.
Oh, interesting.
That can take away
Huh.
a lot of that kind of confrontational feel to a question.
Yeah.
And what the work really requires is having the ability to regulate your emotions within a conversation as you're asking questions. So, for example, if you are walking your dog on a trail where it says, dogs are required to be on leash, and somebody comes towards you and their dog is not on a leash, you might say something like, "Hey, why isn't your dog on a leash?" Or say it like, "Hey, your dog, why isn't your dog on a leash?" Really different the way that you say it. But it also requires that you're aware of your emotions and how you're able to work through these things. But something that is brilliant about it is that you're actually practicing using the words.
That's. Well, thank you for that resource very much, because that's
Yeah,
where
thanks, Anthony.
once I get the boundaries, then I get anxiety about how to say it. And that's, I'm like, I want it all. I want it all now. I want to know how to speak.
It takes practice and it takes making mistakes. And it's experiments and saying, well, how is it going to work if I do it this way, And a lot of it is having to apologize and your shame coming up and saying, wow, I did not handle that well. I'm sorry. I will try to do better. I'll do better next time.
I like that.
But oftentimes you don't know how you're going to respond to something until it happens, because
You're right. And you're not in control. You're not in control when you say it. That would be me. Yeah. Yeah. You're not in your boundary.
The emotional vocabulary words, they've helped me in terms of becoming more fluid in what I'm experiencing and maybe what the other person's experiencing. And that the more I'm able to define it, the more I'm able to empathize or see what's going on for the other person as well.
Mm-hmm.
So the big word that came up for me in this situation was reticent. And I think it was one of the words in fear or shame. I can't remember. I think it was shame. I don't remember.
Either of those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I spent like an hour on the word reticent and all the feelings I had about that, just like your introduction today. What do you feel about, comfort and ease? And so what did I feel about reticent? And, I went through a whole thing of it, of the shame I had around it and my regrets in terms of the reticence I had in my life and the fear of speaking up and, all of those things. And that was just one word,
There's something really grounding about being able to name, to put a name on what you're feeling. So before, when you were talking about being a bulldozer and how that's been your kind of go-to panic response, and how you hadn't connected that it was a panic feeling.
Yeah.
So now that you're able to put a name to it, right, there's an awareness there. There's a groundedness to it. And so being able to name your emotions is a very grounding thing, can be a very grounding thing to do. If you allow yourself to feel it, right? I mean, you can make it into an intellectual practice just by, holding up your emotional, this and this and this and this, and I hate it.
No, but sort of like, yeah, when you feel it, you own it a bit more, you come to better terms with it, it a bit more intimately, It's like my friend used reticent in a conversation I had with her during lunch in a totally different context. I was like, oh, reticence, I know that. Like
Right.
I spent an afternoon with reticence, so you know.
Yeah, there you go. You're developing a relationship with different parts of yourself. And
And I
with
think that goes to what Laura was talking about is you know finding the right words, and it's like learning a you know it's the language of emotions, right? So it's like learning a language. So you're learning Spanish or you're learning French or you're learning the words to use and describe how you're feeling and what's going on in the situation.
Mhm.
And it's like any skill, the more you become adept at it, the the, the more comfortable you feel
Right, the
about it.
practice.
And you just practice. It's like any other skill, you know.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly what we are here doing today is we are just practicing. We're practicing feeling into these situations, finding out like, okay, well, what's coming up for me? Is this emotions from the present? Are they emotions from the past? And where does this situation fall on my values? You know, how important is it
Mm-hmm.
to resolve this situation or maintain this relationship or keep it? Or, you know, how would it feel if I just let it all go? What if I just let it go and moved on in a different direction? What would that feel like? And we're in a space where we can experiment.
I don't want to take up all the time, but and and I don't want this to be a sidetrack, but could you speak just a little bit about values and how they relate to
Your values are at the core of your boundaries.
okay, great.
What's important to you are your values.
Mhm.
Those things that you hold dear. You know, maybe it's family, maybe it's responsibility, maybe it's respectability, maybe it's getting your needs met, maybe
Right.
it's I don't know, like being a loving, generous person.
Hmm.
And so, honestly, I think of this as a hierarchy. There are, and your values are in a hierarchy of
Hmm.
what's most important to, you know, that you don't care about at all, right? And obviously, that wouldn't be one of your values. That would be probably somebody else's. So when you are able to be really clear about what's important to you, about what your values are, and that your value of family is more important to you than respectability, for example, then you know that maybe, for example, if you have a brother who is struggling with drug addiction, that you welcome this person back into your home and your community as much as you can. And anybody who um, gives you crap about it or says disparaging things about you or your brother or your family, you probably wouldn't want to deal with them anymore. You wouldn't want to have them as part of your community anymore.
Right.
So, um, and I mean, all of our interactions, we're interacting with our values. So if we go back to the original scenario from our first session, where this person said they would call and they didn't call, right? That reflects back to me, what are my values in a relationship?
Hmm.
And mutual respect, how important is that compared to having the opportunity to connect with somebody who is really special to me? Right? Am I willing to have some wiggle room in this respect? How much do I have? And maybe it's not really an issue of respect at all. Maybe I have there's some other stuff coming up within me about like old memories that I'm feeling triggered about and could, you know, access and deal with, work with. And then just looking at, well, and maybe using conscious complaining like Laura was suggesting. Well, what's really coming up for me, right? I'm feeling angry that this person is not doing what they said they would, whereas I would do what I said I would. I'm feeling sad that I feel like they don't care enough that that they will take like the 5 minutes to say, I can't talk to you this weekend, or, you know, to text me,
Hmm.
whatever, just to check in. I maybe that I'm feeling depressed because gosh, this always happens to me. But that's a story, and that's like more related to the triggered part of me, right? So So understanding where your values come in relationship to the people you interact with.
Hmm.
Really important aspect of maintaining your relationship
Right.
with people. Because if you're allowing them to trample boundaries that you would normally uphold in other relationships, does that mean that you're receiving something else in return that is more important to you? Say, for example, just connection with another human being, you know? Or is it something where your values feel disrespected all over the place? Like, why? Is that maybe that's speaking to something that's deeper, more of a back in history, your history.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Makes total sense.
No, that's a good question. Your values are
It's something you really need to look at,
yeah,
you know,
conscious.
and understand consciously about yourself,
Mhm.
and that at certain points your values may not be the greatest values. You know, they may be tied to some contracts that aren't necessarily working for you.
Yeah, absolutely. They might be not your values at all, actually.
Exactly. Exactly.
Might be trying to live up to something you don't actually care about.
You don't care about it anymore, that was imposed on you from whenever.
Hallelujah. Yes, I'm feeling this right here.
Yeah. And actually, my two classes, Befriending Anger and Befriending Shame, are about this tension of establishing what's important to you. You know, what are the things that I hold close to my heart, the values that I live by every day. And then Befriending Shame is really a lot about looking at what are these contracts that I've established and do I even agree to them? If you're trying to live up to contracts that you made years ago or even last week, but that you don't actually agree with, then your life will be really difficult. You're going to be in conflict with yourself, right? So, I mean, if you have some kind of unrealistic contract of like, oh, I should always look like, I should always wear makeup and look beautiful, right? According to standard. But maybe you also really hate wearing makeup and it's something that you feel like you just should do, right? So you'd be like putting makeup on your face, like, fine, I'm gonna look beautiful because somebody had said, right? But maybe it's something that you never really think about because it's so ingrained. And so that's what we do is we look at those things and you use these practices of becoming aware of your body, becoming aware of your boundary, conscious complaining to help you become aware of those incongruous contracts, those contracts that don't work for you anymore. You know, when you're feeling that resistance, that's a really great indicator that something is coming up and you're going to have to look at something that you've lived by for a long time. And it might make you question your identity and your sense of who you are and what's important to you. And it also can be incredibly freeing because you have to let go of something that's not yours and that you don't really believe in or want to live by.
Yeah. Yep. And there's some big ones, you know.
Oh, there are, yeah.
There's just big ones.
And there will continue to be big ones, yes. Because we are changing, growing human beings.
Yep.
Right? We don't stay the same. Different things become important to us. We go through phases in our lives. We learn things and we grow.
Yep.
I started a contract list. Like I have a list. And it's and all of a sudden I'm like, oh dang, that's another one. It's another one. And I kind of like it. Like it kind of secretly thrills me because I'm like, it's going down.
Yeah.
That's good.
It's like exciting. I mean, it's really exciting work to do this. I mean, it's nice. It's good to take breaks. Let me be clear here.
It's like the onion, Deborah, the bag of onions, and it kind of keeps. It's like a little bit more every. Like you take a little bit more and a little bit more, and we'll get back. We'll find, I'll find my true self and liberate her, and it's going to be glorious. I already feel it.
Well,
I felt a lot this week, actually. I
coming
felt a
already.
big shift.
I mean, look at her.
Yeah.
Look at you. She's coming through. Hello, Laura.
Great. Can I tell you something that's going to blow your mind? I think
Please.
this conversation is like the slowest, calmest, slowest conversation that I've ever been a part of in my memory. So I am in that very, I had to like always have the answers for my dad, try to keep, so, and then I always had to take responsibility. So I always find myself thinking about what I'm going to say, which there's shame and all this, blah, blah, blah. So being able to actually just sit in all these gaps, it's just so weird to me because I've never had the gift of that, of being just present in a slow conversation, and it all slows down. It feels so lovely. I can't, it's just really foreign to me. And my body internally is kind of like it's kind of flexing. It's like, you should, but I'm like, no, you don't have to. Feels good. I'm like, I'm 53 and here I am, this calm conversation. I don't think I've ever been, because somebody's always like, so thank you guys.
Awesome. How does your boundary feel in this conversation?
Good. See, I've got 17. I had a shift this week, or I have 17 people in my boundary with me now. So I'm not alone. Where I was having a problem earlier in the week is I kept going to, I'm alone in my boundary, how do I know I'm doing it right? That old feeling. And so now I've figured out that I've got all these 17, and we actually had a meeting, all 17 of us, 18. And we sent fear, panic and terror. You helped me with that too, because I was like, I thought it was fear, and it is, but panic and terror and shame had to go back into the hospital room. They're in a coma. They're just strapped down. They keep getting up, and they have to. And then happiness and sadness are with them, monitoring them, because we want to take care of them, right? So now I'm building new contracts with the other 15. And so when I've had the boundary issues, I'm like, it actually got me through something yesterday because I was kind of freaking out a little bit. And I said, I just kind of talked out. I'm like, okay, I need your help. I need, and I pulled up some of the gift people, people in the fear family, they can be part of that, the 15. But I pulled up some of them, like task completion, because I was wanting to not do something because it wasn't perfect. And I just said, I need your help. And and then I kind of relaxed, and then I did it. So now that I've got that, that's my big epiphany this week, is the boundary was, I was like, I couldn't figure it out. And then the 17. Yeah. So that's been a great thing. And it's like, helped me calm down and do things.
Oh,
I don't look like a crazy person. If you didn't know what was going on, you'd be like, she's talking to herself again. No, I'm not talking to myself. I'm talking to, I'm talking to apathy and anger and trying to see them all equally. I am. I'm starting to see it. It's not easy, but because I'm so used to thinking of everything as bad. But there are definitely gifts. They're all positive. Like, it's just, I've always had that negative lens. Yeah. They've been my friends for the whole time, but not the good side, the bad side. Like,
right. But there is no bad side. That's the thing.
I know, that's what I'm figuring out. I'm like, wow.
They were just there, and they were
No
labeled, and they've been given the wrong label.
Yeah.
Let's take a few minute break, and when we come back, we will start in on Laura or Deborah's scenario. All right, so come back in 5, please. Everybody. Oh, wow. What fun we're having today. Deborah, I want to acknowledge you had your hand up to make a comment 10 minutes ago or something.
That's okay. It was all getting covered. At that point, I was thinking about contracts and expectations. So, but it's all good. It's all good. I really appreciate the conversation around panic. Thank you for bringing that up again, Brendan. Very valuable. Everything everybody's saying valuable. And I just want to cop the fact that, whoa, I was getting really spaced out. I don't know if any of you noticed it, but I was drifting. And this happened at the end of our class last time on Wednesday. I could barely keep my eyes open. So I know what that's all about. I know stuff's like really getting stirred up and it's all good and I welcome it. But if I do seem like I'm drifting, I am. So that was helpful to take the break though. I got a little something to eat. I walked around. I moved and
good.
I
And
feel like I'm back here in my body again.
exactly. If you feel it again, feel free to take a break.
Okay.
You don't have to be here. It's all being
I
recorded.
was enjoying it actually. It felt great. It was like great.
Deborah, I love, Deborah, how you talk about your experience. Like that's something I want to do, but I'm not there yet. Like it seems so scary for me to say, I spaced out because it feels like it's wrong, right? Like I can't feel what I feel. So I really like listening to you because you say it, you really start with you. And I always start out here trying to like answer questions and I'm like, huh. So I love how you do that. I aspire to that.
Well, I don't always do that, but I feel like here with this group, I feel like we're all here. And I feel like we are all doing that. I feel like you're doing that, Laura. And I feel like Anshin, you
feels uncomfortable for me.
Yeah, no, I get it. It's uncomfortable for me too. That's why I'm here, is to challenge a little bit. And obviously I am being challenged because, stuff is deep. So it's good. It's good.
And I just want to be real here with you that I notice myself spacing out sometimes too. I am maybe experiencing too much, or I've got my own stuff going on as we're talking or as we're going through something. And so for me, being really familiar with that, noticing it, and just oftentimes just acknowledging it for me, but with a breath or getting grounded in some way helps me to be present with you. So it happens to me too.
I actually think it's pretty pertinent to the conversation that we're having, because I don't think I let myself experience all those levels of feeling generally. Generally, I try to keep it in a certain wavelength or something like that. So, Anshin, you started things with, what does relaxation feel like? Comfort? Does it feel good? Does it feel bad? Does it feel risky? And, that sparked some other questions for me that are talking amongst themselves as we go through these 2 hours here today. So, thank you for creating a space for exploration. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's, I think, what's really important about teaching. That's my job, is to make a safe space, to create a safe container for you to discover the answers within yourselves.
Agreed.
You have them. You probably haven't been given the space or the permission to find them. But
well, as someone who's a facilitator myself, I can really appreciate that when I see that done well.
Thanks.
In my opinion, very well.
Speaking of that holding space thing, maybe it was here, maybe it was in a book that it spoke to me. It said that people really just want you to hold space for them to be. They don't necessarily want answers. They don't really necessarily even need their needs met by you. They just need the holding the space is the need that it meets. And I'm like, So now I'm starting to picture other people's 17 around them. So now I'm starting to like play with different ways of seeing people, because now once I get myself, like then maybe I can start seeing some of their 17, seeing them in the background.
Right, because everybody has their own boundary,
and
their stuff going on, right? But going back to Brendan's example, um, looking at just his boundary, you know, the boundary of the quiet one in the conversation of the listener, and then the boundary of the talker and listener. What does that look like? Is the talker like this and the
Mhm.
listener like this, or
Yeah.
how are those boundaries interacting?
It's so funny because now that you're talking, I'm thinking of this shrinking person going back to
Mhm.
me, and I want to hear everyone else's scenarios. But you know, the boundary is shrinking, and that extending the boundary out is, and speaking and talking is an act of aggression, so to speak, or that's how I see it, right, in my mind. And then there's all this fear that comes around that aggressiveness, you know, and it goes back to panic and all the stuff we were just talking about.
Mhm.
So anyway, thanks, ladies, for being so transparent and talking about this openly. It's great.
I agree. It feels so good. So liberating to talk on this level. I know I've um, never done this before.
Yeah,
It's been very
it's
yeah. I can see why, Deborah, you've done more than one of these. I can see why.
I'm gonna do more too. I'll be there for shame.
I think I might too. I don't
Yes,
know.
for shame, for sure.
Yeah.
Mm.
All right. Shall we start with the next scenario? Who has one that's burning and ready to go?
Rock, paper, scissors, Laura?
Yeah, let's do it. Best of one. Do it.
One,
Okay, one,
one,
two.
two, three.
Okay. I was paper. So
I
you
don't know what that means. Does it mean you go first or do I go first? I don't know.
go first.
All right, I wrote mine out. And you might all laugh because I'm gonna laugh, especially if yours, Laura, is just so in keeping with what we've got going on here. So I wrote it out as a scenario, kind of the way that Anshin, the way you started ours. So I'm gonna just do it that way. So you've just moved to a place half the size of the place you moved from. 1 week after moving, your closest friend visits. She didn't ask, she just told you she was coming, despite you telling her that you thought it would be better if she waited until you moved in a bit. She doesn't offer to stay in a hotel and complains about all the boxes in the various rooms. The day after she arrives, sitting in a park, she begins to voice her concerns about your new place being in disarray, your son's bad breath, how little room there is for the dogs, how uncomfortable she is in your new place. When you try to gently appease her, it takes time to rearrange and get back to a normal outline or normal routine. She continues to cycle through the same concerns, more insistently, more detailed, more lengthy. That's the scenario.
Woo. Go for it. Let's hear.
Oh boy. Well, this is the same scenario I brought up in the last Channeling Your Emotions.
Mhm.
I got a lot out of it, but oh, there's so much more there. And even today, just Brendan, thank you so much. I mean, just listening to the conversation there, and I think, and I'm just realizing this now as I talk about it, I think the reason I keep coming back to this is because there is so much fear and panic and shame around this one situation, and it being representative of a more extreme version of the things that create my feeling like I'm backed into a corner, and my feeling like I don't have what it takes to navigate this, being tired and not feeling good, and that feeling of having someone coming after me, which I've known her for years and years and years. That was clearly, logically, that was not her intention. she was trying to help or solve or do any of those things that I interpreted in that way. So, I'm seeing that fear, that panic, that shame, about things not being right, and also feeling that panic, that dangerous feeling, like no matter what I say, it's not going to make things better. It's only going to make things worse, and I'm going to have to pay for it later. And that's that. All those thoughts about that create that feeling of being backed into a corner. But what I got this morning as we were talking was, so much of this has to do with an expectation. As I said, she was my closest friend. If this was someone I just met and they were saying that, no big deal. So that tells me what I've imposed on the situation. And that indicates that there are some really deep contracts around people who are so close, their family, should, I should, it shouldn't, I shouldn't. So there's a lot of stuff there. And it's interesting because I do have the verbal skills, Laura, like you were talking about. I have the communication skills, but when I feel backed into a corner by someone that I care about, that I have an expectation that they should express their caring in a certain way, clearly the process breaks down. And I will say, when I'm tired and overwhelmed and all of those other things, I wasn't sleeping in my own bed. We just moved. I was exhausted. A lot of other things and concerns were going on. And then, so yeah, I like the way you talked about degrees, Anshin, like the degrees of how contrasty was this. And there were a lot of things that added to the contrast. It would be easy for me to say, if I was prepared, by that I mean, if I did not have that expectation that she should know me better and not come at me that way. So if I was prepared, because I can communicate with people that I'm close to, but that's usually where it breaks down, is when I'm exhausted or sick or not feeling good or already deeply emotional. If I've been setting stuff aside to deal with later, but later didn't come, then later is now. And that's what happened. Later was now. And so when that happens, then I lose those tools. I lose that skill set. And I definitely resort to, like you were talking about, Brendan, old patterns. That's exactly what happens. I resort to defense, to being a victim, to, just not being a very good communicator, not being a helpful communicator, I guess, would be, old patterns. So that's what I saw for myself in that scenario. I'd love to hear what that brings up for other people, because it's really good to have that 360, viewpoint. It's really useful.
I felt fear. Just listening to what you said, like that is like one of my ultimate, I'm just like, ugh, I was kind of repulsed. I was like, ew. I mean, and just this anger came up in me about that, but then also that fear, just that panic and terror. Like, I don't know, that it just, the boundary collapses. And I've been in that position with my dad. Like, and you can't do anything right. And then you don't feel like you can say anything because you have a certain relationship. And I love what you said about expectations. I think my question would be, what do you, if you can dig under, what do you want to say? Like, what do you really feel like? If you did the conscious complaining, what would you say? What would you be saying? What were you pissed about, or what were you, whatever?
You brought up boundaries, Laura, and I think that's exactly what has happened. And that's why I've started taking the classes here again, is because I don't think a lot about boundaries for myself. They're pretty well integrated, but they're also very close to me. So people who are close to me, I let get really close to me. I'm sloppier with people close to me. There's that expectation, right? And the feeling that I have in that situation is I want people to back off. I wish that I could have pushed her across the plaza and said, you stand over there for a moment, because she was leaning in and it was louder, and and so you know, I think that it is a boundary issue first and foremost. I think I could benefit from practicing boundaries with the people that I care about the most more regularly so that they would come up automatically, because that's definitely what didn't happen. I really had this feeling of being backed into a corner and there was no way to get her to back off. That's what I wanted to say. Back
Helpless.
Yeah. No, I didn't feel helpless. I definitely, there was that fear and anger.
Okay. But you wanted her you wanted to push her. I
did,
mean,
yeah,
that's what you wanted.
yeah.
And then when the boundary collapsed, you
I think
Good.
also for me, as we're talking about it, there gets to be this point of no return where, okay, so you said hopeless and I didn't relate to that, but giving up, I do. It's this place where I'm just like, I should have done something much earlier. I should have seen this coming. I should have told her you cannot come, you know, but that was like a woulda, shoulda, could have, right? But at some point, all of a sudden it's all now here. And I just like, I'm like, okay, chips fall where they may, try again another day. And I do get into that, not helpless, but hopeless. Isn't that interesting? Yeah, I give up.
So
Yeah.
And I think in the conversation, I actually did give up and say, okay, I guess I just suck. I think that's probably the words I use. So nonviolent communication out the window. I guess I just suck then. You're right.
I'm laughing because I've so been there. It's like, fine.
Yeah.
Yes, you're right.
Exactly. So
Stomp
you know,
around. Yeah.
yeah. And so I think that this requires a lot more subtlety and distinctions around it. And it is on a timeline basis, there were a lot of points along the way that I could have done something different, but I didn't. So what? Now what do I do when I'm here already? So there's going to be a time, I have to imagine. I mean, I'll be tired again at some point with someone I care about. And so I think that this is a really good, I do think this is a good setting to learn in. And Anshin, you and I had some conversation about that before I did the first channeling emotions. You can see it worked because I'm back again. But I think that this does feel really big, that feeling of being backed into a corner, which logically I know is not what it is. I know that's how it feels like. That's how I'm reacting to it. So.
you mentioned body budget, and I just want to elaborate on that concept. It's the idea, I think it's created by Lisa Feldman Barrett. She's an emotions researcher. And essentially it says that the state of your body and how energetic you are feeling, how much energy you have, is directly related to how well you are able to be aware of and work with your emotions. So if you are tired physically, if you haven't eaten, if you're dehydrated, all those things are going to impact your ability to be able to communicate and to be a real human being versus a automaton robot who's shutting down in the corner. So
Anshin, thank you. That's super helpful. I want to revisit that. And I also wonder if you would speak to, I think I've got some sort of an idea that probably is not helpful, that has something to do with it has something to do with separating the emotions that I'm feeling with the functionality of my communicating. So I think that I have a tendency to, I'm aware of my emotions. In that moment, I'm aware, I'm going to put them over here and I'm going to take care of them on my own later, all alone. But in the moment, I'm going to be not in control, but I'm going to be a communicator. And I think what you just said about the body budget, that's what happens too. So if I'm overly familiar with a person, my ability to be a communicator slips. And if I'm overly exhausted or sick, or in pain, it definitely slips. And then I lose the ability to be present with my emotions, but not have them reacting. I lose the ability to respond. That's what it is. I lose the ability to respond.
So it sounds
So-
like since you kind of lose your boundary, or your
Absolutely.
boundary disintegrates because it's all within you trying to just maintain vital systems.
So that can happen then. Your boundary, the energy of your boundary is going into just keeping you on your feet. It just doesn't have the ability to like set that person far enough away that I can see them clearly. Is that
It could be, or it could be. I mean, it really depends on how you tend to function, right? So if you felt that this situation was becoming threatening to your sense of self, then you might have lashed out and said, "Get away from me," or you might have run away and said something like, "I just need to leave right now," and picked up and left or something.
I wish I had done that. That would have been a better thing to do.
Right. So so it sounds like you may be in more of a freeze mode of like, I just have to sit here and listen to it because that's my contract. That's how I act when I am with close family. Or that's
Oh yeah, I hadn't thought about that, but that's probably getting pretty close. Yeah.
So it sounds like there's some.
I have to take it. I think it's more, I have to listen to it. It's more, I have to take it,
Right.
you know?
So that sounds like a good thing to explore.
It
Yeah.
does, doesn't
Is this contract still relevant? Is it valid?
yeah, yeah. Eliminating all people I care for doesn't sound like the best option, does it? There's got to be something in between.
Right, exactly.
You saying that, I'm now, I had an aha, and it was that contracts, I was kind of like trying to figure out my contracts, but there are contracts with people, like family. I love that. Exploring contacts through people and how those are going to be different. Like, wow, that's
It's
really
funny you say that right when you said I had an aha, Laura. I had an aha, and that was my dad at the end of his life. Is he had just eliminated all the people he was closest to because
Oh,
yes, because serially one at a time they'd pissed him off.
Mm.
That's why I'm doing this work, because I don't want to end up like that, because
Yeah.
that's someone who had no way of being able to channel his emotions or create a space for his, his
Oh,
awareness. I know, sad, right?
yeah. That's-
Yeah.
Isolation, just go into more isolation. That is so sad. And it seems like the older you get, like this kind of doubles down
Exactly.
on you. And then I can see because I'm the same thing. I'm like, I got to do something, or I am like, this isn't going to be pretty.
Right.
But you can do this work at any time. I mean, I have a client who's 83 years old.
Wow.
I agree.
Okay,
That's
that's
awesome.
fine.
That's awesome.
Time.
Exactly. Exactly.
I mean, somebody at that age saying, I need to look at this and be willing to change. It's
Mhm.
great.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. Brendan, what
Oh,
response do you have to this?
The first thing that came to mind was, and you might have to help me with this answer. There's a part in the language of emotions where Carla talks about people who overextend their boundaries or put their fence in your property,
Mhm.
and your friend, at least in this situation, Deborah, just strikes me as someone who's aggressively putting out her energy, her boundary, in a manner of speaking, into your space. And those people in those situations, at least, strike me as people who don't have the capacity of shame to say, wait, I may be overextending myself, or I may be intrusive, or I may be sticking my nose in someplace where it doesn't belong, or something like that. It's a unwanted extension of their space into your space.
It's interesting you mentioned that, Brendan, because my friend is a very sensitive person as well.
Mhm.
And she also, we were going back to values. She shows her love through
Mhm.
problem solving.
Yep. And that was the next thing I was going to say.
And this is where I can get caught too, is that I have, at the same time I want to push someone away and I'm mad at them, I also have an understanding that they're in a vulnerable place as well. And my experience and my story about her is that when she gets scared, she tries to fix things even harder.
Mhm.
So then this is all going beneath my surface. Oh, I'm threatening her because my life isn't together. So I really am at fault. It's crazy.
Right.
This is crazy
Right.
thinking, right?
Right.
And that's what communication, good communication is meant to overcome and get to an understanding and see the needs. But going back to that body budget, I mean, I was feeling all of that. I was experiencing all that. And you're absolutely right. My boundary was probably so close to me and hers was so reaching out around me trying to fix me that I felt all of it, but I wasn't processing it fast enough
Mhm.
to stay upright, so to speak.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's another one of those situations of we've all been on both sides of the fence, right?
Exactly. Exactly. So her value may be right, be the problem solver and the helper. Help my friend. She's moving. I'm gonna help. Right. And I ran into trouble, big trouble, with a friend of mine who I was helping. Right, because I'm a good guy. I'm a helper, and she was doing things in her own business that I thought were just incorrect. That's the most polite way I can say it. And I interjected. I said, you can't do this. Da, 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 da. And it backfired on me. It literally exploded in my face. But that was my value of being the helper, right? And it was, I, the friendship is not in good shape because of my value, right? You're supposed to be helpful, right? We all lived, we were all raised to be, to help but it's a value that I've got to really look at, and in terms of where you were in your with your body budget, it may be, and this may be a convoluted value, but um, you might, just a suggestion, create a value of I need my space when my body budget is running on fumes.
Ooh, yeah.
So when you're moving, all of us, when you move, your body budget is on fumes. I mean,
Yes, indeed.
it's stretched incredibly thin.
Mhm.
So everybody needs to give me my space. I had a guy I knew. He was an attorney, and he was a litigator. I mean, he was always battling in court. And he told his wife, he said, there was a park near their house. So he said, before I go in and deal with the kids and talk to you, I need to go sit in my car in this park for like 15 minutes and just decompress, because otherwise, he said, he said, Brendan, I know I'm going to just snap at people. And he said it was one of the best things he ever did for his marriage, to just go there and
Mhm.
just decompress. And that's what he needed. Anyway, that's just,
He set that threshold. Or
yeah.
created a threshold for himself of I'm gonna go
He,
through this space here, right? Have this decompression space, and when I come out the other side, I'm gonna be a father and a partner.
right.
Mhm.
And it's a psychological, energetic dynamic, but deep sea divers do it. They do it for a reason,
Clearly, for survival, yeah.
for survival.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. I mean, it's what we think we're doing that's right and valuable isn't necessarily right and valuable.
It's funny when I've been listening to this conversation, and I just keep thinking that this is a great example of unsolicited advice.
Hmm.
Totally.
Often it's hardest when it comes from somebody that you love, who's you're
Mm.
close to, right? So they get under your radar, and it's almost like they get you right in the chin. You're like, oh God,
Right.
that was really painful. Oh yeah, we're right about all that stuff. But seriously, did you have to do it this way?
Right.
And if you couldn't, you just let me figure this out on my own.
Right.
Totally.
Something else I want to say about this is you say your friend is a fixer, and something I experienced myself before I figured out how to define my own boundary was that when I was around people who were having a hard time or feeling difficult emotions, I would feel those emotions. I would feel their situation as if it was mine, and I would want to fix it so I wouldn't have to feel it anymore.
Mm.
Mm.
Yes, yes, that was,
Wow, maybe that's why I do that. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Me
I think it
too.
was her fear of being in my situation
Right.
that drove
Mhm.
her to try to fix it so she wouldn't have to feel her fear. I don't know.
Right.
That's my hypothesis though.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
She was panicking.
Maybe
Ah.
the distress that she picked up from you, or the sort of the chaos that always comes with a move, was just too much for her. I don't know.
That's a whole different look for, I mean, that got me because I'm still stuck going, gosh, that triggers my dad. So I was having a hard time having empathy for that person, but I can see that,
And
you know,
this is
possibly.
why I think those of us who are sensitives, who are highly empathic, how tangly it can get, because she's picking up on my feelings and having feelings about it that I'm picking up on in my feelings. And so we're just like giant puddles of gasoline. One match is all that's required.
Yeah.
And how
One, just one.
just one. So it can get really tangly. I in my calm state, I get that, but in my ego needing exhausted state, it's just,
Yeah.
it's like you said, if you can just hold on to that wild horse and know that it's bucking, so that you can kind of watch what's happening, so later you can think about if you could have kept your left leg in place, it would have been better. At the time, there's no thinking. It's just what, it is
Right.
just a trigger. It's a mess.
Mm.
Like you said, Brendan, then it's a mess,
Yeah.
So I will say that sometimes for me, it's like, it doesn't happen often, but when it's a mess, fortunately, I know how to clean up the mess. And so it's like, well, it's going to be a mess. I'll clean it up later kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah. But it would be better to have some skills in the moment when it comes to people who are closest to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, being aware of your body budget, knowing what that means if you run low on your body budget, right? Understanding that, and then setting the boundary for yourself of, wow, I'm not gonna have any energy for this. Or you need to know how I'm going to be when you visit me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't have energy for any of this. Just being really clear about what's real for you, right? What is realistic for you to expect of yourself, and for your friend to expect of you, and also giving yourself permission to set that boundary. I mean, it sounds like you said you tried to appease her, or you said you tried to put her off, right? But you didn't say no. And maybe it was a matter of it was a quick decision.
That goes back to a contract too.
You didn't have enough
You
time.
don't say no to family. You don't say no to people you're closest to.
Yeah.
Their needs, their desires come first.
Yeah, so there's another
Yeah, there's some stuff to do. Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
It's an intricate web, contracts, values, motions,
Yeah.
you
You
can
pull one
navigate.
piece out, yeah, and there's something else.
Yep. Yep.
Oh, Deborah, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh yeah.
Thank all of you.
Yeah.
We definitely have a theme going today.
Yeah.
I'm curious as to what Laura's is, because I'm curious to see if it's, sort of running in this little theme world.
Okay, so I'm changing it. So mine was about, because I've got more than one thing, if you can believe it. It was about not being heard, not being valued by someone that I work closely with, and how do I state that? But I'm gonna do something that triggered me this weekend. And it's a little different. So you have a family member that's going through a rough time, and you're gaining some new skills, and you really want to help family, and you have contracts, right? But this person complains and complains and complains because she's feeling so heavy with things going on in her life right now. So how I got stuck and I got triggered. I listened to it for an hour. Like, I tried to sit there and listen, but I didn't have any sense of boundary. Like, the boundaries went away now that I think about it. And I wanted to go, God, stop. I just wanted to go, shut up. Like, but she's going through so much, but internally I was like, I can't take this. Like, this is too much. And then that's when I told you this weekend, I kind of went shoom like that. And that happened. And then I went shoom. So I don't know that it caused it, but it was part of it. And so listening to you two, that it made me think, like, I felt kind of sad and shame, because what I really want is to be able to stay, like, just that needs to go sit in the car. I'm getting my boundary now, but I'm not to the point where I can say, this is what I need, and I'm going to claim it. I want to do that, but it made me kind of sad and shameful, because I'm weak, right? I want to be able to say, I need this, and I'm going to honor it. And I'm not there yet. And that's what I needed to do that with my sister. So I need some, I need some help with thinking through, like, just kind of how to approach that. Cause I got all muddled up in it. And I'm kind of like, I know it's boundaries but maybe how to look at it from a lens up here. Like, when I go into it, how can I not protect myself, but that's protection. No, how to just set boundaries and needs. Like, I stayed on over an hour with her. Right. And then it was just this and this and that and that. So, and I was kind of beaten up. I felt beaten up after it, when I was really trying to help her, but I felt
You
beaten
were
up.
on the phone with her, Laura, or you were in person?
Oh,
The questions for anger are, what do I value, and what must be protected and restored?
oh, okay. What must be protected and restored? When I'm around, there are a couple other people that get on these tracks. You may have people that they just get upset about something, and they talk and talk and talk and talk. And then I listen and listen and listen and listen. Right. And I'm not okay with that. Like, I'm always helping. Right. And I'm meshing with them and, supporting them. And I don't want to do that. I'm just realizing that. And,
Do that anymore.
hmm.
You don't have to do that.
I want to be a partner in it. Like, and I want to be able to say, I need to do X. And then I get thinking, I don't know, my brain does all those crazy things. And then I don't know how to state my needs. I don't know how to, like, do that. And it's just a matter of practice, but also, like, how just, example. So, like, I wrote that down. I need to go to my car to decompress. Like, that's very simple, but to me, that's not simple.
Mhm.
That would take a lot of guts for me to say that, because I'd think, who am I to say that? That's weak. Why are you doing that?
Well, what part of you is saying that to yourself? Who is that
Oh, good question. Shame.
now?
Yeah, for me, it's panic and terror. Then shame comes in to keep me in panic and terror so that I'm not exposed to the, it still thinks my dad's out there, that terror. And then sadness comes in to assuage just to kind of keep that in order. So that's what I've lived with all my life. It's panic and terror, shame keeping me in check, and sadness being the helper. So, so who's telling me this? Panic and terror and shame. Those two. So I need to I gotta put them back in that bed back in here. And I think, okay, I've got to pull up my other players. And that's where I didn't have those then, but they don't come naturally to me yet. Like I have to sit there and go, wait, what am I, what am I feeling? It's like, still at the body check. And then it's like, okay, you're okay. This is not the end of the world. Right. And then I'm going into, who can I pull up to help me? Because I'm not beholden to shame and panic and terror. That's not that contract.
Well, I also want to point out though that shame and panic and terror have been by your side this whole time, trying to help when your other emotions haven't been welcome.
Right.
So
See, and I've still got this very negative view of shame and panic and terror. Like I can't, that's going to take a while.
Well, I mean, what contract do you have with them?
What?
What contracts do you have with them? Or what have you been taught about them, maybe?
That I deserve, everything is my fault. I have to take the responsibility for everything, and never good enough. It'll never, whatever you do will never, ever, 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 ever be good enough. So you've always in shame. Like you can never be happy about anything. But I what you just said, like the other 15, 14 have been in the dark. I don't even know them.
Right. Yeah. Maybe the panic and the shame just need a vacation.
They keep coming up. They keep leaving the vacation and coming back. Yeah. I'm hearing you. I need to, that's why I want to get that deck of cards, or I want to make something so I can actually make them physical and visual, because I have to see it. Like I have to have that spatial reference for me. And then I think that will help me. Yeah. That's a start. Yeah. I felt out of control after that phone call. And I think also working on just thinking about things that I don't want to do, like those contracts, like what do I not want? And then what do I want? And then working on a way to state that. That's a kind of a fear for me, like how to say that, like, because that's always been something I didn't have the right to do. It's a contract.
Yeah, that's a big deal. Just being able to state boundaries is a really big deal.
Yeah, it's scary.
So something that I've learned about in business is actually this thing called upfront contracts, where you start your interaction by saying, I've got 15 minutes to talk tonight. What do you want to talk about? Or I know you're going through a lot and I really want to hear about it, but I'd also like to talk to you about this thing that I've been going through. Do you think that you could listen to me?
Can you write those somewhere? So serious. Like, I'm like, I want to say that kind of stuff, but I don't have the words. I don't have the skills, like, because those did not have a place. I love those because they're not, I was either, I'm one side or the other. I never can just say I feel like, I like it both.
It's called upfront contracts, Anshin.
Yeah. You're just essentially stating that the boundaries of your interaction, the guidelines for your interaction.
Yeah.
Start.
I like that. That's powerful. And that frees everybody up. It gives everybody a boundary. It kind of gives you a shared boundary almost.
Right. Yeah.
Huh.
So, I mean, that's what writing a class outline does for me. It's an upfront contract of like, hey, this is what we're going to be doing in this class, so you know what to expect.
Yeah, and I feel like since I don't set those, I end up getting into situations and then I can't, like, then I have to figure out how to get out of it. Like, then I'm stuck. So if I could set those more up front and be more aware of that, that seems like a wise thing, a helpful thing to my
Just
growth.
of knowing what you want to start with, right? Or
Yeah,
checking
yeah.
your feeling. Well, how would it feel if I gave this person an hour? Well, gosh, that didn't feel good. 10 minutes? I can do 10 minutes.
Yeah. Like with my sister, or whoever that talks, I feel like I talk for a long time and I just sit there. It could be an upfront contract about.
Right. And then it's important to follow through, right?
Yes, I know.
So, and if you need help with that, you might get your husband on board saying, honey, you said you would help me with this in 15 minutes or whatever. You can get support to help you maintain those contracts or maintain those boundaries when at first when you really need it, until you become better at establishing those boundaries and you're in the habit of, or I think of it as going through the kind of the flaming hoop of, oh my God, the panic, what will happen if I do this? This is new and scary and dangerous. And once you jump through that hoop and you feel everything and the shame and the panic and the fear is all right there, and then you get through the other side and you're like, oh, I'm okay. I made it.
Yeah. Yeah. Flaming hula hoop. Yes, that's what I'm afraid of. Yes. Just jumping through.
Exactly. Yeah.
Body's like, no.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Give yourself a chance. Yeah, Deborah.
Years ago, I was going through a divorce, and I had we could do all kinds of scenarios about me and my mother-in-law, but I'd have to remember them, and I'd rather not. But my counselor, one of the problems I had with her was I would get that trapped feeling, and I couldn't overpower her. She was the queen of being very powerful. So my counselor came up with something really creative, because I wasn't comfortable not being honest about what was going on. So this was a strategy my counselor helped me come up with, was I always kept a glass half full of water by the telephone. And if I was on the phone with anybody and I started panicking, I would knock the glass over, so water spilled, and I would say, oh no, I just turned something over. Give me a few moments to clean it up and I'll call you back.
Great.
And it gave me that break. Well, here's the funny thing, is I never had to do that, because I already set something up that was like a safety mechanism. And that half glass full of water lived by my telephone for 2 years until I moved. And I never did ever have to tip it over, but it was always there. And knowing that it was there, and knowing that I had a strategy that I could do that I wasn't lying, even though it was sneaky, it wasn't lying. It was so, it's so odd. That's why I mentioned it, because it was so odd and comforting. And it was someone who knew me well enough to help me come up with a strategy, but it really helped. It really helped.
It's interesting that you didn't have to use it. It did
It was
its
a form
job.
of training wheels, almost like.
Yeah. Huh.
Great.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I'm not saying do that. I'm just saying
it's a great example. No, this is
training
something
wheels
you could
for me.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, you could apply that to anything, a lot of things.
Right. Yeah. I think just having an exit strategy for yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah. Exit strategy. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it was.
I don't have that. Yes, I want that.
Not stuck in a situation that you feel like you don't have any control over, until you
Yeah.
a place where you feel like you can break in and say, you've been talking for an hour and I really have to go. Like you're going through a lot, and that's hard, and I'll talk to you later.
I want to say it like that. I'm always like, I really, I feel like I've got to come at it from this side of it. Is there a book of like strategies, like communication strategy, exit, entry? Like I want all of them. And like, then I'll just walk around to people. My husband's like, you're using me. You're training with me. You're training me, aren't you? And I'm like, no. And he's like, yes, you are. And I'm like, maybe. Because I try everything out on him. He's like, what are you doing?
I just want to acknowledge it's 5 after, and
Yeah.
oh, our time together has come to an end. But I just so appreciate
Oh,
you and your willingness to explore your emotions and to be present with what you're feeling and to share. It's so beautiful to watch this process and to be a part of it and to be able to support you in it. I feel so incredibly privileged. So next week I will send you an email with links to videos of all of our recordings of all videos, and I'll also send you the 2 resources I talked about today: the Sharon Ellison, her book "Taking the War Out of Words," and then
Thank you.
Lisa Feldman Barrett. And also,
yes.
I can actually find what she's written on the body budget, or there's a great synopsis of her book, How Emotions Are Made, and that has a part of it about the body budget. So I'll see if I can find that article.
Will you throw in those upfront contract phrases that I liked? If you can remember them. They were something about the beginning.
Yes, just upfront contracts.
Yeah, I want those. I want those as examples to use.
Okay, yeah. Well, watch the recording.
Oh no, okay, there you go. There you go. All right.
Yeah, they'll be there.
Yeah,
They'll be in
right.
the recording, so you
They'll
can
be there.
what you want from the recording and use it
Yeah,
to practice with it. Absolutely.
perfect.
I also want to encourage you to stay in touch. The Language of Emotions has a reading guide that you can use, that you could use as a format for meeting with each other and going through and just having discussions about the language of emotions, or the different chapters in the books. There's 16 emotions. The language of emotions doesn't actually have anxiety in it, but Carla did write an entire book about anxiety called Embracing Anxiety, which is also really fabulous. And I just really encourage you to stay in touch and to keep working and talking. Deborah.
Mhm.
I just, I'm mentioning this because Laura, you said something about being visual. And after taking the course with Carla, I got one of these, the decks of the language of emotions, which has all
Really?
cool things. Yeah, you get them on the website. They're really reasonable. They come really
Oh,
fast.
okay.
They get sent out right away. And Carla was talking about what she called emotional theater, where like one emotion would come forward and the others. So I've actually been using the cards myself with that. And so I'll arrange them in front and see who comes forward and who's the companions on its side and who hangs back. And then when I
Oh
deal with that, which ones come forward. And so it's almost like I move the cards around on my desk like they're players in the situation. And I found that really cool. So just wanted to mention that.
I'll be doing
That's
that.
something. Yeah.
That's what I can do.
I find it really works really well. I didn't come up with the idea. Somebody mentioned it in the class and I was like, I want to do that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That the theater thing that she has really was a game changer for me.
Oh, was it? I didn't get to see that, but
It was in a video. It was in a course, the Emotional Genius course. It was at the end. She did a 15-minute video and it was what you just described, like what emotions are coming forward. And yeah.
yeah, she said she did it with
Thank you.
actual people, like someone plays anger and someone plays sadness, but people did start triggering each other. Which I think that's hilarious. Anshin, have you been there when she's done that?
Yeah.
Yeah. What was that? What was that like?
Well, it's funny. It was actually a really long time ago that I did this with her. It was my first time meeting her. And
Really?
so we were just in this big room. There were 30 of us or so. And it was just really fascinating to watch people kind of coming forward. There was a lot of confusion because the way that people think about emotions is often different than what your emotions are actually trying to do.
Oh, yeah.
So people think about anger as being angry, I'm going to stomp around, but that's not what anger does. That's what anger does when you're not listening to it. When you are listening to your anger, it's patrolling your boundary and making sure that you're maintaining your boundary and living by your values. Right? So it's like, it's kind of your lookout, like, hey, what's going on? And then there's your shame. It's your internal lookout, like, hey, are we living up to the contracts that we said we would? Are we, living with a clean conscience? And then there's she calls them the China cabinet emotions. So hatred, suicidal urge. There's probably another one in there. But anyway, those the China cabinet
Question?
they only come forward when there's like big stuff coming up, and you need a lot of
They only come out, right?
the other
Yeah.
can't get
Okay.
China cabinet emotion, or just stay back there until you're really needed. Then you break the glass and you break it out. Anyway, she has a video I think she has a video on her YouTube channel.
Oh, I gotta check that out. I gotta check that out.
Her YouTube channel is fabulous. It has so much information. She goes through so much. If you are a video person, her channel is a fantastic.
Yeah. I think she
I gotta
added
check
some during COVID too.
Mm-hmm.
Are you guys on the Facebook page, Facebook group?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I think I am. Yeah.
The language of emotions.
There's good stuff in there. I love how she posts things and then people talk about them from different perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
So there's lots
So-
of
Anchin, are you going to be doing this again, the channeling emotions? Is this
I'll be
something you're gonna
offering
do?
it again in August.
Okay,
Probably the end of August. And
okay, great.
I'll put a note in my newsletter about it, and I will also email this group and
Please do.
check in with you, and also to let you know the next one.
Okay.
Please do.
Yeah,
Thank you,
Thanks to all of
everybody,
you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
so much.
such a pleasure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
Well, we've got the email thread. We can stay in touch. Absolutely. I'd welcome that. And I feel like I've really grown leaps and bounds this week. My mind has changed. Like I'm seeing things very differently.
Great discussion. I'm going to look at these videos again.
Yeah, me too. Me too. How long are the videos going to be up, Anchin?
Oh, indefinitely.
Oh, great.
Uh,
Okay.
Even better.
Fantastic.
You'll have access to them for as long as you have the link, and
Oh.
I mean for as long as YouTube exists, probably. So.
Fabulous. All right.
Thank you so much for that.
Yeah,